I'm not sure if anyone had any questions or thoughts that they had.
Yeah, I really like that, Chris. Thank you so much. I don't think I've actually seen this presentation, but it was very applicable to all of our medical situations, and especially I wish I knew this stuff going forward. I guess one of my questions is, a lot of people are into some of those physician blogs, white coat investors. And how would you say this? A lot of people are very resistant to the idea of paying for any financial advice. A lot of people are very skeptical about the financial industry, as they well should be. How do you respond to those and gain confidence? And because a lot of people would just want to do it by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a extremely good question because we find that not only in finances, but we find it in many different facets of life, right? I think one of the common ones we see is everyone wants to be fit, strong, and healthy, but to actually do it on their own is one thing, and to buy a gym membership doesn't mean that you become fit, strong, and healthy. And statistics have shown that if you have a personal trainer, if you have the ability to join a class and be accountable to other people, people can coach you through it, right? And any successful person in whatever they do, and you can look at, let's say, athletes, all the top athletes, elite athletes who want to get to their fullest potential, they all have coaches. There's no, Roger Federer doesn't do it by himself. um, Tiger Woods at the time didn't do it by himself. Michael Jordan didn't do it by themselves. They always had a great coach supporting them. So I think the same thing is true in healthcare, right? We don't want our patients to just say, "Hey, I got Dr. Google, so I can figure this out on my own." Yes, you can get a lot of great health tips and principles, but everyone's situation is different, and you will always need someone to bring new ideas to the table, because what we find is, with especially physicians in later stages of their career, is people will tell you when you're doing something wrong, right? The IRS will come to you and tell you when you're doing something wrong. The bank will come back to you and tell you you're doing something wrong. But it doesn't mean that they'll tell you when you're doing something absolutely the best way. And I think that's really what people need to coach for, is to be that person to say, "Hey, I'm looking at your situation. Have you ever thought of doing this instead? Because this could have a long lasting positive effect for your financial outlook or your financial situation." So I think there's a lot of great information in those blogs. But I think that's what they are. It's trying to condense all the information there is out there and really put it to the masses, right? But the reality at the end of the day is there's always individual people's situation where not the same thing works for everyone. So as long as people understand that, I think that's fine. So I that's what I would say about that. I mean, we come across, I think the other day I'd come across a physician who they actually told me, I read White Coat Investor and everything, but that's for like the average
Right.
person that's reading it, right? So what's average, right? And I think everyone is in a different position.
Yeah. I think Barry Cooper had some thing on the chat. He was asking. Let me see.
Did he? Sorry, let me.
Yeah, he's asking, when refinancing from federal loans to private loans, do private lenders also use interest capitalization?
They do, and they're gonna do it they're gonna do it like credit card companies. It's gonna happen
Yeah.
on a regular basis. You can't pay all of it. Well, now you're gonna pay more moving forward until you catch back on your payments. So student loan refinancing is it's something that people have to really think hard about, and this is an area I truly believe people should seek help with, if they're going to make a decision on this, because if there's a possibility of student loan forgiveness or just option, even right now, we've seen a huge a case study with all these people who've refinanced and they have to still pay. And right now, people who are in the federal system right now, they're not even accruing any interest right now, right? So there's just some flexibilities you do give up, and not everything should be just focused on the lowest interest rate. Um, Same thing to do with like buying a house, right? Not everything is to do with the lowest interest rate. It has to do with, well, what do I need to do to get that lower interest rate? Is it worth it for what I'm giving up? Because there's always going to be a tug of war between the decisions you make.
Chris, it's Rob Allison here. What do you think about diversifying your financial advisors? So for example, I have an advisor, my wife, well, she doesn't, but my dad who passed away, he had an advisor. You want everyone to know your portfolio and your values so they can make a unified plan for you. How do financial advisors work together for you?
Our model has always been very simple. We don't want people to replace anything that's working well for them. And I think the same thing is true for physicians, right? Physicians are not here to say, well, you need to change everything if it's already working well for that patient. So that's how we approach it. And the reality is people accumulate many different financial advisors over their lifetime, just like you do in healthcare, right? You're always going to need that person though that centralizes it all and becomes that coordination. You're always going to need specialists. You're going to need a estate, you'll eventually need an estate planning attorney, a mortgage guy, a CPA, maybe a life insurance person, a retirement plan person. The question that we just pose to our clients is, who's the person other than yourself that make sure all of those people are talking to each other? Because if they're not talking to each other, just like in a medical team, right? If you got just every specialist is doing their own thing and they're not looking at each other's notes, the question becomes, how do you know that they're not doing something that's counterindicated to what another guy is doing for you? So people will acquire multiple financial advisors over time. The studies actually have shown that once people start getting towards retirement age, generally most people have about 4 advisors helping them, and they almost always will consolidate to one, because just from ease of management, simplification, and they also want to work with someone who's going to carry them through the next stage of their life, right? The person who may have carried them up to now, they might be aging, and just like your primary care physician, right? Are you going to go out and seek, you want someone knowledgeable, but at the same time, you also know that if you seek someone too mature, too experienced, maybe halfway through the plan, they're no longer going to be there. And then where do we pick up after that? So it's a balance for sure.
When physicians are early on in their careers and they're offered employment contracts and loan repayment, is there any advice you would give to that young physician on whether to accept these things? Is there a downside for free money? Is there an upside? How do you go about educating our residents and medical students to make those decisions?
Hold on.
I think you're unmuted now.
Oh, am I? Okay, there. All right. No, that's a great question. When it comes to that, we all inherently know that nothing is completely free, right? There's always some string attached, and it's always going to be buried under some legal language. And so when you have those contracts, we're not attorneys, but we've seen a lot of them. We want to help review them and just give guidance. And some of them are non-negotiable, really. I think we've come into a situation where healthcare is much more determined by other people than the physicians themselves, right? Whether it's through how they get paid through insurance carriers or the medical institutions that are hiring them. So, but it doesn't mean that you can't ask, right? And you should always ask for what you want and just for clarity. Otherwise, you'll never get it if you just sign the dotted line. So we like opportunities where people can take advantage of contracts that help pay off student loans. We think that people should be looking out for them, but they're not as common in some of the places that people ideally want to move back to potentially, or where their hometown is. So it's a case by case basis, but truly believe that that's one way that you can accelerate your financial situation.
Chris, what tips would you give young doctors? I'm attending and I teach a lot of students at the School of Medicine here in South Dakota. And one of the didactic teaching I do is not actually medically related. It's really on the foundations of building wealth and prosperity because you know, and I am very amazed. A lot of people have not heard a single thing. They're completely oblivious when it comes to medical education. They could be this high, and when it's financial literacy, it's almost zilch. And I think a lot of them do appreciate me talking about it because I'm probably the first attending they ever heard discuss this. And a noon report, I'm talking about some of these principles and not medical things, which is kind of refreshing for them. A lot of them say, well, maybe when I start making money, I'll read more into it and things. What would your advice be for them? Because I'm always telling them, you got to start now. When you're a pillar 2, which is essentially a third year here, you got to start now. I mean, how would you go about encouraging our young future doctors to get ahead of the game? There's so many things I wish I knew, and I'm sure Rob probably feels the same way. I wish I could have done that all the way when I was a medical student, but no one ever guided me through this or even brought those ideas to my attention.
Yeah, no, it's just something that's not taught, unfortunately, and I'd like to see that, right? I think it should be because we see social economic disparities because when you come from an upbringing where you just never learned it, and this is just an area in life that most people just never have discussed. It's never too early to start, is what we say, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to engage in anything now, but developing a philosophy around money and just understanding how money works is a huge thing, right? If we know that our principle should be to save, right, then that's something that will carry us through the test of time. When people don't understand why they need to save and the concept of saving, then when they come across money, it's so easy to impulsively, right, say, hey, I sacrificed the last 26 years of my life and now I'm finally getting a paycheck. I'm going to go get my dream house. I mean, not my dream house. They usually start with a car, right? I'm going to go get my dream car. And then as soon as they get out and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm getting an attending salary. I'm going to go get that forever home, which usually doesn't end up becoming their forever home. And then after that, we start kind of keeping up with the Joneses or, what other people have. And I think people just have to understand first, well, this is where I start, the foundation of it all, how money works and how money will move through my life. And from there, all I got to do is just build on top of it. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to have to sacrifice in all of those things. It's just maybe we're not going to get it this year. Maybe it's going to have to just wait till a little bit down the road. But because of it, so many more things can fall into place and put us really, and I think everyone has seen on those investment blogs, and it's true, right? It's all about the time that you have, right? So if someone's starting to save, and I meet them, some people are starting to start thinking about saving in their 50s or 60s, and we can never undo the decisions we made in our past, just like our physical health, right? I'm sure you guys see patients all the time where couldn't you have come to us sooner, right? Becomes one of the questions, but you can't do anything about that. So it's now, what are we going to do today that gets us to that better place in the future?
Well, Eric, you are the first life coach that I know as a physician, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. My experience, not with the University of Nebraska football team, but I've heard they do that for their players that are going on to the NFL. They teach them how to do the money things. What I do personally with my kids, right now I have a 17-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 22-year-old. What I tell them is I will match their an IRA account for their money that they earn right now. So I pay their dollar for dollar earnings. So I'm incentivizing them to earn. And I'm fortunate that I'm at this place where I can do that. And so I just write the check for their IRA, and then they learn, oh, this is a process, this is important. And by the time, they see that graph that you so well showed that stretch upward of the time of value of money. It's fantastic.
Right, and I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
why I
yeah.
really get into it, Rob, because you're right. You cannot beat the time value of money. If I knew the stuff I did and I started it as a resident, putting my 20s, I would have been so far ahead right now. But you can't get a decade, right? Gain a decade back. So I try to teach the new generation, start now. When you're gonna hit residency, don't just splurge that money. I know it's the first time you're making a paycheck, but really try to put some of it in your Roth and do something important with it.
Carson, are you online there? You're our primary student here. What do you think about some of the stuff we've talked about tonight?
Hey, yeah, sorry, I've had a really spotty connection. I apologize, but I've got most of it.
Yeah.
I think yeah, you guys have been giving great information. I really appreciate it.
What kind of exposure do you get at your level? I know I didn't have great financial exposure. Do you guys get any, or can the ACP, can some of the financial advisors like Chris, I mean, is this valuable to you? And would you like to see more of it?
Yeah, I think definitely. We get very minimal, like Dr. Chow talked about. I'm actually in a rotation with Dr. Chow right now, and some of what he's taught me has been the first exposure to the financial aspect. So I think, yeah, especially like if this is recorded, making this link available to the med students would be very much appreciated. I could share it with our class too.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't screw up anything when Chris handed this off to me. It still says I'm in charge and it's recording, so hopefully I don't have dogs barking and I take snapshots, by the way, Chris, of your slides. They're very good. Could you make your slides available as well?
Absolutely. Yep. I can.
Yeah,
I
if you
can
want to
send it
send
over
those to
you guys.
Chris, and then we can put that in with the combination or somehow link it up, because you really had some good, very basic, very simple, but very explanatory. It was really, really well done. Well, we have 5 minutes left here. Barry, do you have anything? I don't know if you're on listen only. Do you have anything you want to type in the chat?
Yeah, I think he had said his mic was disconnected, but I'll add another comment while he's potentially typing. I think what Eric mentioned is very true, right? Because if you're getting out of even as something as simple as graduating from med school and you're starting to think about should I refinance my student loans now? I'm gonna have to start paying on it. I get a lower interest rate. Or maybe they get into residency and someone does a very responsible thing and they don't buy that newer car and have that $800 payment, and instead they're putting it to their student loans. What happens when they finish residency and they've had this amazing offer, and that organization says, hey, we'll pay off your student loans for you when you come here, but because they refinance their loans, maybe it may no longer be eligible to be paid off potentially. So again, flexibility and just making sure someone is there to be a sounding board for them is key. And I think that goes back to the question of, should they do it on their own, or should they have someone in their back pocket to just bounce ideas off of? So I think there's an invaluable component to just make sure someone is right. Should I lease a car? Should I buy a car? We all know that if we've ever been in that situation, there's headaches both ways. But if you've never done it before, then you just don't know what you're getting into, right? So I think, again, going back to, it's just seeing what works and what doesn't work. And if you don't have to reinvent the wheel and repeat other people's mistakes, then let's do our best to avoid those.
All right. Well, with that, if we want to finish up, again, I'll try to post something on our Facebook page. I just put that on the group chat. I don't know if anyone could see it, but otherwise it's at South Dakota ACP. That's our Facebook page. And then our Twitter handle is at SD_ACP. So if you can join us in the future, we'll be having more of these. This is a fantastic thing. Eric, thank you for coordinating this. Chris, thank you. Is that the Nepali coast, or what are we seeing there?
It is, yes.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Is that your island?
No, I'm over on in the main island, Oahu, so Honolulu.
Very nice. So we have a lot of AMA meetings. I've snuck over there. I think I've been to every island,
Yes.
fortunately. So, and Eric, you trained in Hawaii as well, right?
I didn't train there, but I worked there for 3.5 years as an attending.
Fantastic.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'll turn off the recording and look forward to meeting you guys at meetings. And Chris, if you ever get to the States, I don't know how often, maybe we'll see you in Rapid City if you want to visit your brother or not. That's up to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys. Have a good evening.